So it's been a year since Starfield came out, a little more if you count early access, which should be counted, and it's hard to believe that before release it was one of the most hyped games of the year. Oh my god, it's gonna be like Skyrim in space. We can build our own spaceships. It's gonna kill Star Citizen. It was the most hyped space game since No Man's Sky, and like No Man's Sky, it disappointed a lot of people, although it took some time and it was less obvious. But has Starfield gone better or worse since its release? Well, it's complicated. Let's look back and recap on what has happened. After the official release, the honeymoon phase lasted about a couple weeks, at which point people started to think, maybe this game isn't as great as I thought it was. And this was reflected in the reviews. In a deleted Reddit post, which I can only find from an Inside Games video, in the first week of September the reviews were great. Critics were really digging Starfield. But then as the month goes on, and you get to October, you see a very stark decline in review scores, with more 6 and 7 out of 10s rolling out from critics. And this was also reflected in Steam reviews. First month, 70% positive reviews. A month later, just over half of the reviews were positive. By the end of the year, the hate train was at full speed, with a mostly negative rating. It was so bad, Bethesda employees were seen publicly trying to defend their game in Steam reviews, which is about as effective as throwing wet napkins into a raging wildfire. And the player base shrank as well, by like 97%, and people made a big deal about that, especially when they compared it to Skyrim's and Fallout 4's numbers during a similar time frame. And I've also commented on it as well. But of course, this story never mattered. It was just something to talk about and farm clicks. That was right around the time when Bethesda came out and made a promise in their official website and subreddit in the form of an end-of-year update. In this post, they say they will update the game roughly every 6 weeks starting in February, with these listed gameplay features. In total, there were 6 major updates released so far since this game's launch. The first major update came out in November of last year. It added DLSS support, which its absence made some modders briefly wealthy. It also added a button to eat, along with various bug fixes and improvements to the game. The next major update was released in late January, and that was mostly lighting improvements, optimizations, and bug fixes. The third major update came out in March, which added expressions and poses in photo mode, plus more quality of life improvements, along with the usual improvements and bug fixes, like the infamous gap in spacesuit cases. But it wasn't until the fourth update, released in May, over 8 months since the game's launch, where we finally actually saw some new content in the game. There was a new map system, which was an insane upgrade compared to the previous maps. It looks really well done. New ship customization options, where you can customize ship interiors along with new empty ship halves to accommodate that, some new outpost decorations, and tons of new gameplay options as well. This was also the last update to go into Steam beta before going live. Just over 3 weeks later, during the Xbox showcase, Bethesda announced the first details of Shattered Space, and I made a video discussing about that, which I've linked in the description. Right after the showcase, they launched their 5th major update. It fleshed out the Trackers Alliance faction with new missions, a new location, a new mission board, bounty scanning, new currency, and more. They've also added the ability to modify melee weapons and craft ammo at workbenches. Oh yeah, and this rather obscure feature that no one's heard about called Creations, which brings official mod support, both free and paid, and the creation kit to the game. I originally planned on making a video about the new bounty stuff back in June, but shit happened and I couldn't make it in time. I still want to make it though, I just don't know when. And then nothing happened for over 2 months. Well, actually, other than QuakeCon, when Bethesda announced a Doom-themed quest was coming to Starfield Creations for free by some verified modders. It wasn't until Gamescom where they revealed additional details plus a release date for Shattered Space. And right after the announcement, they released the 6th update, which added a new vehicle called the Rev 8. I've made a video on how to get it and my impressions about the new vehicle, which you can find in the description, but there are some things I left out. The vehicle can be used for mining as well as scanning, which can be very useful for surveying planets. And as one commenter pointed out, the effectiveness of your laser turret can be determined by your laser weapons and explosive skills as well. What's interesting is that it took almost an entire year to implement a drivable vehicle into the game, which kind of validates my theory that the creation engine never had any built-in driving mechanics and had to be implemented from scratch. There was a comment on my video, which I can't find anymore and might have been deleted, but it alleged that some developers from the Forza Horizon series helped implement the driving mechanics in the creation engine, and the way they did it was they mapped an invisible mesh onto the terrain that only the vehicle can interact with, but the mesh only worked on relatively smooth surfaces, so your car can't drive up rocks or sharp inclines. I'm paraphrasing from memory. There might have been more info, but the thing is I can't find any information to corroborate that comment, so you gotta take it with a huge grain of salt. So that leads us to today. Shattered Space is coming out in a couple weeks. But has Starfield gone better or worse 1 year later? Well, I've always maintained that Starfield is not a bad game. It's a good game, not great, not exceptional by any means. It's probably like the most 7 out of 10 game of all time. Remember when people got mad at IGN for giving Starfield a 7 out of 10? Those were the days. However, I also have to mention that this game is what allowed me to grow my channel to 4 digits, and hopefully more. And without it, it would have taken me a lot longer to do that. Hence, I'll always be grateful for Starfield's existence. So Starfield technically did get better. A few months ago, I made a video talking about all of Starfield's problems, which I've linked in the description. And they've addressed some of them in the past few updates, like the vehicles for example. And they've delivered on all the features they've promised from the end of year update. But there's still a lot of issues that remain unaddressed. It's definitely not improved enough to change the minds of people who didn't like Starfield in the first place. Moreover, I have this concern, which I've stated in previous videos, is that they're just gonna offload that work to the modders, which has been validated actually because it's been stated explicitly in one of their videos. And I have other concerns with creations as well. One of which is that as the creation platform matures and we get more DLC and expansions, the base product will inherently get worse over time, kinda like The Sims. It's a topic that's worth diving into, but not in this video cause I don't want to make it too long. But the shiny object to look at is Shattered Space. Will Shattered Space save Starfield? I'm gonna say probably not. I'd love to be wrong though. Although there are signs that Bethesda is learning their lesson. The expansion comes with only one new star system, and that star system only has one planet on it, Varun Kai. And this planet will have 50 new locations to discover, and the content is gonna be more handcrafted and rely less on procedural generation. So they're definitely going for quality over quantity this time. So in conclusion, the game did get better, but not enough to make a difference, as evidenced by the player numbers. And obviously that's not gonna change until Shattered Space comes out. And the thing with Shattered Space is that it seems like it's gonna be a self-contained expansion. There will be another update coinciding with its release, but most if not all of the content will be contained in that one system, so the rest of the settled system is still gonna be kinda empty. Speaking of Shattered Space, let's look at Starfield's release schedule this year. Again, we know there will be an update coinciding with Shattered Space, which would make it the 6th major update of 2024. And assuming Bethesda sticks with their 6 weeks per major update pledge they made back in December, that would mean they have 3 months to release 2 major updates. Now I don't know if they'll do that. There will certainly be at least one major update after the expansion this year, but I'm not gonna guess when they'll release it, cause it's pointless and I've been wrong every time. And then there's a second expansion rumored to be named Starboard, which I may have an idea of what it's about, but until Bethesda says anything, it has to be taken with a massive grain of salt. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe and ring that bell. A comparison I like to make is No Man's Sky. There's also Cyberpunk, but I think Cyberpunk was always a great game that was marred by various technical issues that people love to hate on. And those issues were more fixable than the ones Starfield has. No Man's Sky went through the ultimate redemption arc. It took over 2 years from launch to reach its original promises, but since then, Hello Games has gone above and beyond with dozens of major updates over the past 8 years. All of it free by the way. Meanwhile, Starfield has paid mods. But it'll be interesting to see what year 2 will bring to Starfield, especially as Bethesda plans to support this game long term. As I mentioned earlier, Starfield has a lot of issues, and some of them aren't actually obvious and can seriously hamper the game. And if you want to know what they are and how Bethesda can fix them, then I highly recommend you watch this video right here.